Hello, everybody. Welcome to Cryptotawk. This is Usman, and I'm here with my good friend Ayo Farid. We're here to talk about crypto, everything crypto, and just kick it, share some insights, talk about what's going on. And this is our first recording, and we plan to do many more. So, what are we talking about today?
Yeah, I mean, it's actually amazing starting off this podcast eventually, right? I mean, we've always had this in mind and always been basically pushing it off every week. But I'm just glad we're kicking it off
Right.
right now.
Yeah, we had to push. We had to make sure we tried it today.
Yeah, I mean, just before we kick in, just to basically let everyone that's probably listening, that will be listening to us, just have a little bit of like background about us. I mean, you can just kick it off by just taking a little bit about yourself and about your crypto journey so far, and how you got into the space.
Well, I actually had a background in customer relations over a decade. Got into the space briefly in 2015 when I decided I was too chicken to buy a Bitcoin. Then after 2016, and I saw Bitcoin rise to 21,000, I was like, never again. So that was my starting point with the crypto. Fast forward 2018, 2019, dabbled into a little bit of Forex, a little bit of crypto trading. And then I got into this crypto space, I guess you could say properly, around 2022 when I started working in the Web3.
Yeah, I mean, that's wonderful. I mean, this is a story like I kind of like get to hear often with people I talk to, and this also applies to me with regards to crypto, with regards to getting into crypto. Most people, when they get into crypto, when they buy their first crypto coin or when they buy their first Bitcoin, most often than not, they actually just leave the space and probably just come back a little bit later. That was exactly what happened with me also. I mean, I got into the space around 2018. And 2018, I bought my first Bitcoin. I currently stay in Nigeria, and a friend just said, "Oh, Bitcoin is this coin, this internet money that basically goes up and it's basically untrackable." And I was like, "Oh, is this shit not like some kind of like fraud and all?" And I was like, "Okay, I'll just give it a try." And I just bought a couple dollars worth of it. And after like a couple of days, I was like, "Nah, this shit is probably like, is it that scam with like my money's just going to keep depreciating," and I just sold it off. And
Right.
I didn't come into space throughout the whole 2018, and then I came around sometimes 2019, and when I came 2019, 2020, especially during the pandemic, that was when I actually got deep into the space, especially just after the February crypto crash. I was like, okay, let's see what this is about. And I heard about Ethereum, then I learned about Bitcoin, and I mean, from there it's been, let's say, up only. So
That's awesome. So you would say that when you started in 2018, were you among a very few people, or was it already kicking off heavily over Nigeria?
I mean, over here in Nigeria, I think there's one thing about Nigeria and Nigerians that is they basically, when you hear about anything in Nigeria that, okay, this thing is actually making money, everybody actually gravitates towards it. So, I mean, in 2018, there was a lot of people already in crypto. I mean, not as now in 2023, but there was a lot of person in crypto. I mean, there's still not a lot of like content, a lot of like insight as we have today. But
Okay.
I mean, it was not like, I mean, that time there was, I would still like basically hear about Bitcoin on probably every street. So it's not something that was new, but it was already like grounded already. A lot of people had made millions from it already.
That's very interesting. Because over here in Sierra Leone, it's the complete opposite. 2018, I'm sure nobody heard of it. When I got here, a lot of people had the association of anything crypto or anything online as a scam, especially when um, they had a lot of negative first impression in society, because you had a lot of people, or a few people, who would use the term crypto mining and as a means to defraud other people here. But we're here to tell you that that's not the case, and it's something that we want to educate, those people that, crypto can be a way for, success, self-efficiency. And I think it's something that we should look into.
Yeah, absolutely. And just to basically drop this off, right, before we get into the nitty-gritty of what we're going to be talking about today. I mean, firstly, it is essential to put this disclaimer out there that whatever we say here, just like Osman has rightly said, is basically educational. We're not basically giving any sort of financial advice, and nothing we say here should be construed as financial advice. This is just purely entertainment. I mean, we're just like two random guys on the internet just talking about Bitcoin. Why would you listen to us anyway?
Exactly. We're just here to have fun.
Yeah, I mean, let's kick it off. So tell me, what are we talking about today? What's the topic for today?
Well, I think if we're talking about currency and money, I think it's important that we kick it off right with the history of money. And, just talk about how everything got started. Because I think one of the issues for transitioning to understanding crypto and the blockchain environment as a whole is the fact that we need to understand how money works. So I think that's why we should, get started with that.
Yeah. So basically today's topic is going to be basically cryptocurrencies, the rise of cryptocurrencies, right? And we're going to be talking about the past, the present, and the future. So that's basically what we're going to be talking about. And to kick it off, we're just basically going to be talking about, what was the world like before cryptocurrencies? Before we had the first cryptocurrency, which is Bitcoin in 2009. What was the world like? And even before we talk about what was the world like, before we talk about currency, I think we have to take our mind back to history and what was life like before money, before currencies. I think money has actually been a thing, but what was the world like before currencies, before this whole thing? So I think what would you like to basically put us on what you think we can talk about the past of cryptocurrencies and the evolution of money and monetary policy?
Absolutely. So way back when, we're talking ancient times, people were using what we call a barter system. And this is just an exchange of goods or service directly, person to person. And this system, it was around for a while. We had people trading, let's say, potatoes for livestock. Other people, would have services that they will render for a payment of specific goods. So that's how people were exchanging money in the past. And these things, there were challenges, dealing with that type of system. So one of the things is sometimes maybe if this person only had potatoes and you didn't want potatoes, you wanted carrots, you have an issue now. You either had to grow carrots or had that other person grow carrots.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the barter system is basically one that I think everybody except you just born the last 1 year or 2 years, you should actually have heard about the barter system. And just like Osman has said, barter system is basically where we basically exchange goods and services. And at that time, and as this old system, there were no currencies available. There was nothing like money you don't have the US dollar, you don't have the naira, you don't have the Sierra Leone currency to basically exchange for your goods. So you had to like basically, okay, what do I have? I'm a farmer, and Osman is basically like a cobbler. So I have like probably have mangoes, right, that I grew in my land, and I basically want a shoe. So probably I'll just have to take some mangoes, a bunch of mangoes, have to give it off to Osman, and Osman is going to actually probably make me a shoe. But then actually with this barter system there comes some problems, right? So this was actually where you say probably I have a bunch of mangoes, but because Osman basically doesn't want to continue eating mangoes, he doesn't want mango, and he probably has someone else that has probably oranges, and he doesn't want mango, he's probably not going to trade with me, and that is actually a limitation of the barter system, right?
Absolutely. That's exactly how it worked. And you know what's crazy? After a while, people started seeing that, this is what they call a double coincidence of wants. So, people just realized that it wasn't as efficient anymore. So they started looking at, other issues like other intrinsic value properties, things that are not easy to come by. And like generations had passed when this had happened. And what we will see is that they will have, let's say for instance, a community was very small. You can keep track of that public ledger that, somebody took livestock from this person, somebody took wool from that other person. But once the community started getting bigger, people started growing and communities were thriving. You started to see that became very, very messy. So they had this whole system of an IOU. You know what I mean? Where it would that's where the first note came from. So it's actually pretty interesting when you think about it, how that conversion from barter system with goods to just simple paper that everybody understood and took as a means of payment. And that's pretty much what the typical money is today, right? When you talk about it's just an IOU.
Yeah, I mean, that basically kind of like when you talk about the public ledger and things like that. I mean, it's basically just let us know that there's traces of banks right from inception, right?
Yeah.
The traces of like the whole concept of ledgers, the whole concept of actually knowing that okay, this livestock belongs to these intermediary kind of things.
Yes.
So that was like the whole essence, the whole traces of banks, even though they were not as recognized as we have it today. But moving away from when we're talking about the barter system and how it actually has a lot of these challenges, I think as the community grew and as they realized that okay, this barter system has a lot of like problems, a lot of like difficulties, and to kill this they had to like look for alternatives. I think this actually leads us to basically like a sort of like development of money, right? When we talk about probably transition into things like probably cowries and probably things like cowries in terms of looking at the African landscape, and also probably in a more global economy you look at things like
Salt.
Salt, or probably I mean like the way have we reached a time where we have things like gold, silvers and bronze and things like that?
I'm sorry, I didn't get that.
Yeah, I said with after the whole process of like trying to like trade with cowries and some rare things like that, have we do we have the introduction of things like gold during this era, gold, silver,
exactly. Shortly after that, like you would see things like the shekels, the cowrie shells, even elephant tusks. I mean, sorry, whale teeth. These things were used because they were very hard to come by. But you started to see coins being minted around 600 BC in the Asia Minor area, and this was done, to employ soldiers and stuff like that as an IOU. So you can see that transition there where these notes turn to like minted metal coins. It could either be copper, silver, gold, and then they started using it as payment systems for the military.
Yeah, I mean that's very, very interesting. You know, talking about the whole processes of actually having money and the evolution of the whole monetary system. It's something that it's very exciting even for me. So I mean, after the whole processes of like salt and whale teeth and what have you, I think that basically led us into probably the paper money, or am I correct?
Absolutely, yeah. It's the paper money that these governments actually took on. They started. They assumed that it was just the best way to go because these IOUs. In fact, China also had that. China had these IOUs, and their notes were printed and issued out by the government. Huge pieces of paper.
Yeah, I mean, that's amazing. I mean, just before the paper money, I think what actually led to the paper money, I think, was just basically saving and talk about this whole thing. I think what led to the paper money when we look about after the whole processes of the barter system, the whole things of using rare commodities like, gold, silvers, and what have you. The inception of paper money was basically like when after the World War II, I think, when the whole world actually uses what is called gold and what is called silver to basically transact, and gold was like the prominent money, right at that time. Gold was what you basically used to like buy things and buy that, because it's basically rare, and for you to actually have more gold, you have to basically dig, you have to do a lot of work. So it's not something very common. However, with the whole World War II thing, there's the US actually had to become the world power right after the World War, because basically a lot of all these gold were actually in the US banks. And why were they in the US banks was because US were actually not affected by the war in the World War II, and there was actually most of these gold were actually deposited in their bank. So what happened was there was actually these meetings that they had, and with this meeting you basically like the US actually decided, and there was like these heated conversations between the US and the Great Britain, right? And the Great Britain is actually wanted to actually be the one to have custody of like the whole gold, and then the US also wanted to, but then majorly because of the fact that Great Britain was like very involved in the World War, and US wasn't really affected with World War, and most of these gold were actually kept in the US. US actually like become the custody or the custodian of the gold. And for everybody to actually, because of the fact that with gold comes a lot of like limitations. Goods, you can't carry like a whole bunch of gold and walk around the city. You're probably going to get robbed, and even if you don't get robbed, like it's just the whole stretch. So yeah, I mean, of course. So yeah, with the whole kind of like the US situation, whereas you have to like, they kept the gold and everything. To actually access this gold, you have to go to the US have to like sign a kind of like a treaty or a kind of like a custodian like situation, whereas they keep this gold for you, and then for you to actually have access to this gold, they basically get a piece of paper and have it written down with a signature saying that you actually have this particular amount of gold. Now I think that period of time was like $35 for a pound of gold, right? So basically, you can, with that paper, you can basically exchange it for about a pound of gold with $35, which was basically written there in that piece of paper. That is what basically with the US collect these, and then with this piece of paper, you can take it all over the world and basically exchange it for your goods and services, or exchange it for whatever you want. So this ran on and on until, just like you probably would think, until like there was like a default, until the US actually, this is the whole problem of actually saying like you have a custody of money, because it's something that is, it's something that when you keep custody of money, you actually might just, power is something that they said, power is something that consumes you, and actually having the power to actually control money will definitely consume you, right? So, just not to get deep into things, when we talk about the whole concept of monetary policies and the whole introduction of paper money, there are different school of thought when we talk about Austrian school of thought and the Keynesian school of thought, who believes that the Austrian school of thought who believes that the whole monetary system should actually be limited to the government, and the government should basically monitor that. And then the Keynesian, basically you have to like, it's basically to the fact that no single person should actually hold money, right? No single person should actually be in charge of money, because if you actually are in charge of money, most likely the whole power you have on top of this money would consume you, right? So if you were actually given the power to print money and circulate around the world, you probably just print a lot of money for yourself, right? I will. So
Yeah.
that basically introduced the whole paper money kind of thing. And but with paper money thing, with the whole just to take it off where I basically talk about the whole paper money thing, is basically where you have this money when the US defaulted in actually honoring withdrawals, in honoring you having to come with this paper kind of money to withdraw your gold. Then the world was like, okay, if they're going to default, then we're just going to like basically have our own kind of like currency. And then at that time, gold was actually the whole dollar thing was actually backed by gold. So but then I think that was the gold standard. It was backed by gold. But then as the whole thing transitioned, when the US defaulted, most countries actually had to like add their own currency also, and that was how we actually went from the paper money being backed by gold to actually just having paper money not backed by anything, right?
Yeah. So I think what you're referring to here is economic inflexibility. Sometimes you'll print the note, but does not necessarily mean you have access to this finite resource such as gold or silver or whichever. So what ended up happening is that they can't really print money if there was no gold to back it up. And the United States saw that as definitely an issue. And this is something that they decided, we're going to get rid of it. And instead of backing it by gold, they ended up backing it by oil. But that's for another story. That's for another subject. But other than that, what tends to happen since the gold standard was removed from the system, it actually helped growth, in the sense that you were able to, the countries now were able to print money and suppress printing money by, and then we're able to manage the economy in a way. So if there were too much spending going on, they'll go ahead and reduce the actual printing of money. And intraday, that's when they started bringing in interest rates and all these other policies in order to try to keep the dollar at a certain price. Because I know every year we have to go through inflation, right?
Yeah, exactly. That actually brought in the whole concept of inflation, where we had to like depart from the gold standard, where we had like depart from the gold, which was a finite asset and a hard asset, to actually printing money which was not backed by gold. That basically it was actually not a scarce resource anymore. printing money can just be done as much. You just have to like punch the button and then you print as much as you can. I mean, that basically brought the whole concept of inflation, right?
Yeah.
So I mean, and then with inflation come with the process of actually reducing purchasing power, right?
So it was something, the thing is now, if all this came to be with fiat currency, what we call paper money, why did we need to start dealing with crypto and the blockchain and all of that?
So yeah, absolutely. I think that basically leads to us taking a look at about the background of money and talking about how it has affected I mean, so far so good. We've talked about the whole processes of like monetary policies, the whole history of money, and basically we know that the whole system that caused the gold standard, that caused the paper money, that is basically not backed with anything, that brings the challenges of like inflation. Whereas if you actually print a lot of money, it causes a lot of like problem in the economy. The problem in terms of like, if you look at what do we have? What we would call it? If you look at things that happen in probably Africa right now, things that happen in there's this country, I usually forget the name, Zimbabwe, right?
$1 trillion note.
Yeah, that's crazy. I mean, it was hard for me. I thought that was just some kind of like exaggeration when I heard about it. Sometimes that year I was like, okay, it's not possible that you have like $1 trillion note and you can probably just purchase about 3 eggs. I was like, nah, it's not possible. But then come to think of it, that was actually what was going on.
Yeah.
And that was actually what was also in there's this country also, is it Australia?
Where was it?
I said, is it Australia that had this whole inflation problem also?
No, actually, Australia has been doing well economically for the last 3 decades.
Yeah, I mean, there was a country I'm trying to remember. Yeah, but generally, what I'm trying to like get at is basically, we so far so good. We've talked about the whole introduction to like money. We've talked about the history of money. We talk about how we talk about the barter system. We talk about how the challenges it has and how it led to the monetary system, right? How we talk about the US, the Keynesian money. We talk about the Austrian monetary policy and a whole lot of things right now. So I think it would be nice to basically kind of like put it on hold over here and probably have a second episode sometimes later, and when we basically talk about how this whole inflation thing and everything, how it led to what we call cryptocurrency, right?
Yeah, definitely hold that thought, guys. We will get back and talk your ears off about why crypto has made a revolution or started a revolution from the traditional money system that we had.
Yeah, I mean that would be nice. I personally, I'm a crypto maxi. I'm a crypto maxi. I'm that guy you find on the streets that basically just came off his lung and tell you not to actually own fiat. But then yeah, it would be amazing to basically talk about the emergence of crypto and how crypto has actually tried to like battle the whole problem of like traditional monetary system sometimes later, and that would be amazing. So what do you have to like say to the audience before we kind of like wrap it up?
Yeah, well, I really enjoy talking to you. That this is something that's also good for me. So I think stick with us. You're gonna learn a lot of things. We're also gonna be learning a lot. Garrett. So, I mean, until next time, guys.
Yeah, I mean, it's a learning curve for me. It's a learning curve for Osman, and we plan to actually do this regularly, and let's see how things go. And also, don't forget to, when you listen to these, let me know what you think. I and Osman would like to like have an idea of what you think about this. You think we're doing this right? You think we can improve on anything? But definitely, either ways, we'll definitely be here more often than not from now on. Have a nice day.
All right, guys, take care.